Another thing that I get all the time is the fear and the anxiety. And I kind of find this interesting because people, I'm sure you get this too, Jeannie. Well, you don't look so frightening as an auditor. You don't look scary. There's a lot of anxiety around going under audit anyway, especially if it's your first audit. So
Right.
what would you tell a nonprofit to expect when they're getting ready to undergo an audit? Maybe what do they need to have prepared, or just general expectations?
Right. It's a great question. So and unfortunately, the first time you ever have an audit is probably the heaviest and most labor intensive audit you'll have to do, because, and there's a couple of reasons for that. An initial audit, or even if we're taking over from a prior auditor and you're switching firms, right? Either way, the standards require us to do a lot of work on what we call beginning balances. So let's say you're a calendar year, your operating cycle is January 1 to December 31. The auditor has a lot of responsibilities on those January 1 numbers in order to get our work done. So if we've never performed an audit before, we're going to have to do a lot of extra work there, or we're going to have to work with your prior auditor to find out what they did to be able to rely on their work from the previous year. Probably more so than that, though, is if you've never had an audit done before, the auditing standards require that the standard is literally called understanding of the entity. And what that means is we have to get to know you. We have an obligation under our standards to get to know your operations. If you think about not-for-profits, a traditional 501c3, we used to call voluntary health and welfare, like a social service type organization, is really a completely different animal than an arts organization. The funding is different. The types of transactions are different. The type of expenses are different. So what we have to do in auditing is we have to do what we call a risk assessment process. We can't audit every number. We'd be there for months, and you wouldn't want us to do that. Sure. And our report says we didn't audit every number. It says we looked at things in all material respects. Well, in order for us to set that threshold and decide how deep do we need to dive, we've got to understand what you're doing and how you're operating. And it's a very comprehensive process on the front end of the audit. So if you've never had an audit done before, you're going to get a boatload of questions. How do your internal control procedures work? Who does what within your office? Who's in charge of your programs? How do your programs work? How do these funders work? It's a lot of questions, a lot of getting to know you. So the best thing I think an organization could do to prepare for the first audit they've ever had, if you have a lot of good operating procedures, we've got policies and procedures for our accounting and for our programs and things like that. If they're not written down, they're going to need to be. So go through the exercise of listing those out. Get yourself a policy manual if you don't have one already. The auditors can use that. And if you have one and hasn't been updated in a couple of years, we understand that. I know the feeling, right? And even in my own firm, we have things that haven't been looked at in a couple of years. We need to refresh, but go through the homework of getting that stuff up to speed. It'll really help smooth out that early stage planning process that the auditors are going to need to go through.